process of opting out of your smart meter is like being bullied by kids at school. You've likely heard just a few of the problems with smart meters. Even policy papers put out by smart grid technology experts admit that smart meters and smart grids are not synonymous, are a waste of taxpayer and electricity ratepayer dollars for electricity that, for many, has ended up costing more, not less, wasting more energy than they save, and even that the meters are an unjustifiable, unnecessary intrusion into our privacy, with Dr. Timothy Shokel pointing out that data to be collected by smart meters, including intimate personal details of citizens' lives, are not necessary to the basic purpose of the smart grid, despite what smart meter advocates routinely claim. That and houses and apartment buildings that were not built to take smart meters, which is basically everything that we have save for the new houses built under the last decade, are routinely bursting into flames.
Nearly every home in the metro has one, but the devices used to track your electricity could suddenly catch fire and put you and your family at risk.
Which isn't exactly something you want your house to do. Smart meters enable two-way real-time communications with your home. Notice it's two ways, not just the one that would be your house sending electrical use data to the electric company. Consumers hope that that's all the information that's being sent out and not being sent to, say, any third parties, considering we live in a world now where even people's robotic vacuum cleaners are essentially gathering up data on the layout of their houses for, at the very least, marketing purposes. It really wouldn't be a huge surprise to anyone paying attention to find out the same happens with smart meters. Cost and privacy and houses bursting into flames aside, one of the biggest reasons to get rid of a smart meter isn't even really publicly discussed in mainstream circles, and when it is, officials like to scoff as if it's all a debunked conspiracy theory. But it has to do with your health. There are hundreds upon hundreds of non-industry funded scientific studies that prove and have proven for decades now that non-ionizing radiation can be harmful to health, resulting in illness and dis-ease that manifests in myriad ways. It has been shown to cause damage to DNA. It's been shown to affect your adrenals, your thyroid, your pituitary gland, that whole section of your body. Of course, it affects the way that your brain talks to itself. You have all these people today taking melatonin. I hear that all the time. People can't sleep. They're just taking melatonin like it's Tic Tacs or something because no one can sleep anymore. It's because you're being pulsed all night long by your smart meter and your cell phones, an electromagnetic frequency that's going into your body. You cannot see it. It's not in the visible spectrum, so you don't know it's there. And people, what they can't see, they don't think it can hurt them. Well, it can. Non-thermal microwave radiation not only impacts water, something 70% of your body is made up of, but it can directly penetrate your body. It can affect your immune system, which in turn can affect every other system in your body. But of course, government outfits like the National Cancer Institute and the FCC and the industry at large will all say otherwise, despite the fact that even the World Health Organization, and thus the mainstream media, have now been forced to admit that the radiation from smart devices like cell phones are a possible human carcinogen.
The World Health Organization says that the radiation from mobile devices like cell phones is a possible carcinogen to humans.
And it's been listed on the same carcinogenic hazard category next to lead, chloroform, and engine exhaust fumes. They're operating under this myth that not only is non-ionizing radiation not harmful to you because you can't physically feel an effect of heating, which has been thoroughly debunked in studies that they obviously are cherry-picking which ones they decide to tell you about, usually the ones that are funded by the government that are pro this technology, because obviously there are a lot of military capabilities that would be severely limited if they had to edit the health effects and actually admit something is going on here. Not to mention how we have a cell phone tower on every street corner these days. Now, just for a moment on an aside, I want to point out that a few years ago when we moved into our house, it had a smart meter, and I began to notice a problem when my 6-year-old began refusing to sleep in his room at night, the window of which faced the meter on the back of our house. I would wake up and find him sleeping on the living room couch in the mornings. The meter itself was on the outside of a little sun porch that we turned into our work office, and after a couple of months, I began to notice that sitting in there made me feel hot, sometimes dizzy. I'd get headaches like I had a vice tightening around my head, and I generally began to feel like I was suffering from PMS all of the time, which, if you're a woman or you live with one, you know is like living in or with a mood-swinging nightmare banshee out of one of the blacker pits of hell, after a while. We finally had an activist friend come out to our house and bring her EMF meters with her to measure what we had going on here as far as dirty electricity and EMF and all of that. They say it's every 15 minutes, by the way. That's what they say. But we had someone come in here with one of those really expensive electromagnetic frequency meters and tested the thing, and it's sending out very high pulses that come right through the windows, right through the wall, probably like 7 or 8 times a minute. Okay, so that is not every 15 minutes. And those pulses were so strong that the meter itself is on the back of our house, but the pulses were so strong that even using that meter to test it by our front door, the pulse waves were coming in and shooting across the entire house. So anywhere that you would be in the path of this array where it's shooting out, you're going to be getting pulsed with that repeatedly all day long. And they try to say things like, well, it's way lower than the FCC standard, but again, the FCC standard is based on, what, like 40-year-old research that was done by the military, some arbitrary thing they put in. It's way lower than other countries have for safety, like, say, Russia. I think it's like 1,000 times lower than the safety standard for Russia on EMF. And they say that, oh, well, your cell phone is much more dangerous. Well, that's not actually true when you consider that your smart meter is pulsing. They average it out and give you the low average of what's coming out of that smart meter. They're not telling you about the high pulses that are coming out of there that shoot way off the charts, very harmful. And you're just being pulsed with that repeatedly, multiple times per minute, all day long and all night long while you sleep. And it was explained to us by our friend that came out here with her equipment that, it'd be like it being in your room and trying to sleep at night and having someone turn the light switch off and on all night long. That's the way your brain is dealing with these frequencies that are coming out of this meter. On top of that, our power in this house was always wiggy from the day we moved in. We had all kinds of weird stuff going on. Many times our dryer wouldn't start, and then sometimes when we would try to turn it on, the oven would shut off and it would reset all the power in one half of the house. Clocks and everything. And we had an electrician come out and check all our wiring, and no one could ever figure out what the problem actually was. Well, we figured out what the problem was, and you'll see what it was in a minute. Back to opting out. After placing a smart meter on everyone's home anyway, despite all the issues and the risks that have been coming out, and then telling us that because they're on everyone's house now, those are now standard meters, and your analog meter, the ones that everyone have had for decades and decades, those are all now non-standard. If you want your analog meter back, that is now considered non-standard. So instead of using the phrase smart meter, instead they are saying what you want is a non-standard meter. And because you're trying to get something that's non-standard, see how they do, then they can charge you all of this money to come change it out and charge you monthly fees to have someone come check your meter since they can't just do it remotely. They have forced everyone to have smart meters unless you go through the process of opting out. A process that, as you will see, they have made about as nonsensical, confusing, and arduous as possible, seemingly on purpose, just to deter people from doing it. So this is what happened when we opted out of our smart meter.
Hello, I'm sitting in my house where I often exist and spend time, and we've been very concerned as of late about the electromagnetic spectrum around us. Though it's invisible, it could pose health risks. Alright, chances are you know that. I've known that for a while, but we finally got serious about the signals in our house. Now, previously we went to great lengths to make sure we had our internet service hardwired because the standard now from major companies like Time Warner or AT&T is to put in wireless only internet connections in the homes. It's now the standard. I think probably virtually everyone around me has them. But we were the first ever person, for at least our installation guy, to actually put in a hardwired internet. With that said, we've started the arduous process of actually going through with opting out of our smart meter. But it's not done yet. We've contacted the company today, which we actually have a retail electric company that has no power to change our smart meter. We had to contact the underlying service provider, which in this case is Encore. And I suspect it's much the same with any other provider throughout the state of Texas or the country or whatever. But in order to get the smart meter off through this company, first we had to call them.
First we had to call and request that we wanted to opt out.
Calls are recorded for quality assurance purposes.
Hi, I need to opt out of the smart meter and have a non-standard meter put on my house.
Okay, sir. I'd be glad to assist you with that. Let me, we do have a line for that, a particular line that'll assist you with that. I'll go ahead and transfer you over, okay?
Can you give me the number just in case I get disconnected?
Because I don't only have the internal extension. But let me see if I can find the,
They had this number listed on their website, and I've already been disconnected a couple times.
Help you?
Hello?
Yes.
Hi, I need to opt out of the smart meter and have a non-standard meter put on my house.
Okay, I'll be happy to request. May I have your first and last name?
Yeah, the first name is Aaron, Aaron, and the last name is Dykes, Dykes.
Okay, now I have some questions for you, and I have some things to advise you of. My attempt is not to persuade you otherwise from your decision. It's just that we do have to tell you prior to mailing the letter out. And the only question I'll have from you from this point on is the reason. Do you have the reason why exactly? Is it due to high usage? Is it high to health reasons? The reason why you want to change to analog?
I'm sorry?
What's your reason for wanting to change to analog meter?
We have health concerns.
Health concerns, okay.
I'm also very concerned about your policy. You're going to mail a letter before I can switch service?
You may, yes, because you have to review it.
And we're supposed to be receiving a letter in the mail within 5 to 7 days, at which point, if we accept the terms, we could sign and return it along with the check for between $169 and $200 some odd dollars. So it's going to cost us a couple $100 just to have the actual smart meter removed. But making that payment isn't the end of the story either. We have to mail it back. That will take a couple days. They have to process and accept that letter, and then, according to their own policy, they will send someone out to remove the meter within 30 days. That's a month of continued exposure. I'm really eager to have it removed, but there's a waiting process, and it's just so revealing. Their own policies on their website for this company, that to have the smart meter removed, it's the letter, it's the mail time, it's the call, it's the money, it's the 30 days of waiting. But if you don't have a smart meter, if you happen to have a house that still has an old analog meter and you want it changed, all you got to do is call them. You don't have to pay a dime, and they'll be here guaranteed within 5 days to change to the smart meter. What does that tell you about their priorities? What does that tell you about their real concerns? I think it's extremely revealing. And even if you badger them on the phone and remind them how much you have health concerns about the people in your family and you don't want to be exposed to this thing, they still wring their hands.
Unfortunately, that's the only option we do have. And then we asked to try to get this sent out through email, and they've denied that. We do have to advise of the cost that you have to pay to remove the meter and the monthly charge, as well as other options that we have to go through.
Yeah.
And like I said, my attempt is not to persuade you otherwise, but it's just some things that we do have to advise you on the phone on the recording.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I was going to advise something when you mentioned the other options we had regarding health. Have you gone to online? Since you mentioned health, we have online with Encore, and we have online through the Public Utility Commission about the health concerns. Have you gotten a chance to read up on that? Or if not, know that they are there available for the customers to read.
So your attempt is to suggest that there are no legitimate health concerns?
My attempt is to advise you that there is Public Utility Commission's website information on health and how that relates to our meters. If you did not know that they're available, this recording is advising you that they are available now.
Okay, where can I find that exactly?
I have the page here.
And they still drag it out, and they won't comment on your concerns, and you've got to read through the state of Texas's health concerns, which does not mention non-ionizing radiation, except to say that there are no known health concerns with non-ionizing radiation, which is a real cherry picking of the literature. We've read through all these books, they cite scientific studies, and it's a very thorough and convincing case that at a bare minimum this should garner much more attention than it has.
www.puc.state.tx.us for any questions on that.
Okay.
Smart meter safety.
All right.
Now, some key points that we have to talk about. There's only 4 key points, and that's number 1. You won't be able to view or manage your own energy usage in almost real time, and that's the Smart Meter Texas portal that we offer. You will be able to do that.
Which we didn't know about and don't use anyway.
You will be required to wait up to 45 days to switch retail electric providers.
as we have continued health concerns. Because we've got half the people in my house have headaches right now because of this smart meter. And we've just had someone out to our house to show how that energy is pulsing through our house. And we're very, very concerned. I think it is outrageous that you make people opting out of the program wait 6 or 7 times as long as to have a smart meter installed. I think that's very revealing about the motives of Encore.
Okay. So the third point is that you may not be able
You're not going to... can you acknowledge what I said? Do you think it's a bit of a disparity that you guys would race out here to put in a smart meter, but you will drag your feet to remove one?
I'm trying to...
Because we're paying hundreds of dollars to have this removed, as well as additional service fees. Why do we not have the priority of an ordinary customer?
Well, I can't advise regarding the process in this time frame. I can only advise of what the process we have to do over the phone on the recording prior to sending the letter out.
Yeah, all right.
You're welcome to comment, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. But if there are questions that I can't answer, like what you're mentioning, I can't comment on it, on your view. But the third point is that you may not be able to participate in some retail electric provider plans, and that you should check the retail electric provider to see if you have that option to go to a non-smart meter option. And the fourth will be that you may experience longer restoration times in cases of service interruption.
Well, we've already covered how you have no priority for opt-out customers.
Okay, so the range to start up at that one-time fee range is from $169 to $211, depending on the type of service that you choose.
Well, how do I know which cost that'll be?
It will advise you in the details of the letter that I explained to you that I don't have. I can't give you details, but the letter will.
How long will the letter take to arrive?
It just as long as the postal service takes in Texas.
What state are you mailing it from?
We're from Texas.
Okay.
So the monthly range fees range from $26.69 to $31.38, depending on the meter service that you have and that you choose. And that's it. That's the only things that we have to advise you of.
Okay. So you're going to send the letter right now?
I'm sending the email to go to that department, and please allow at least 5 to 7 days for the mail delivery to process, and you can contact us at the 1-888.
So you want me to wait 5 to 7 days for the letter to process, plus the time of the mailing, plus the time for my response, then 30 to 45 days?
It's 5 to 7 days for the mail delivery processing.
So it could be up to 2 months before this is changed out.
No, I can't say that.
That's what you just told me based on the time frame.
I said that it could take the 5 to 7 days for mail delivery and processing.
Well, I'd like you to go ahead and process that, but I'd also like to speak to your supervisor.
Okay, bear with me one moment. I'll get you to them.
2 hours later.
So,
It's insincere. Their opt-out effort is insincere. They obviously didn't want to do it, and they made multiple hoops that you have to jump through in order to actually opt out and actually have your meter changed. And it's a subtle form, well, I guess it's not intimidation, but it's the counterpart to intimidation, where it requires a lot of proactivity on the part of the consumer to actually get out of this program. Because they've come and put them in by default, and again, their own policies on the website say, if you happen to not have a smart meter, they'll be here within 5 days guaranteed, and they'll put it on free of charge. But if you don't want the smart meter, if you have health concerns, they will remove the smart meter very slowly after a 5 to 7 day letter mail out process, after you sign and acknowledge the things he's already said on the phone that I've already said and acknowledged. And then it will take up to 30 days after you pay between $169 and $200.
people get intimidated about going through this process and having to pay more, but what I just wanted to say about that really quickly is that a lot of people online have actually said that because you don't have a smart meter anymore, they actually cannot charge you any longer for peak usage, which is one of the reasons they love putting in these smart meters. They don't know when the peak usage is if you have an analog and they have to send someone out here to check it all the time. So all these people are getting charged peak usage rates. You won't be getting charged that. You'll actually probably end up saving. I've seen a lot of comments and comment threads where people say, you know, yeah, it was $30 more a month to have my analog meter back, But I actually saved 30% on my electricity bill because I don't have the smart meter and they can no longer charge me for peak usage, which is what they love about it so much. Which would be one of many, 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 many phone calls that would transpire throughout this process, as you will see. Now, there are kits available for doing this yourself, I just want to point out, but considering that our electricity had already been having all kinds of weird issues, and that we're not that technically minded in that area, we didn't think it'd be a good idea for us to attempt it. But I'm not going to tell anyone else what to do. I do know that back in the early days of smart meters, if you attempted to replace a smart meter with an analog meter yourself, power companies like PG&E began threatening legal action against people. They were cutting people's power off when they did that. But I believe that bad press finally forced them to stop doing that, and I haven't heard of anyone being sued or arrested for replacing their own meter in recent years. I do know that some people were arrested attempting to block technicians from installing smart meters. They did do that for sure. Anyway, then we had to wait a week for our special certified letter to arrive, which would tell us all of the extra fees they were going to charge us, both one time and monthly, just to get an analog meter put back on our house.
All right, so we called on the phone and we opted out of our smart meter with Encore, and they took several days to send it. I mean, part of it is just normal mail, but it's certified mail. They know for a fact it got here. I had to sign for it. So we're going to send it back the same way. We're not going to play games.
It's very serious.
I mean, it's just service to a residential house for power.
You have requested to replace the existing advanced meter at your premise with a non-standard meter, you horrible bastard. You must pay. One-time fee for choose one option. Replace existing meter with an advanced meter with the communications technology disabled. Replace meter with a digital non-communicating meter. Or replace meter with an analog meter.
Wow, the analog is the cheapest option and the one that I want.
And the fee is going to be $26.69 a month for us to switch it. Well, I guess it could have been more, I guess.
You will be required to pay other fees and charges for requested meter discretionary services associated with your choice.
Of your non-standard meter.
What does that mean? What are these other things?
I don't know. I guess it's going to tell us, right?
Could be longer restoration times than an outage.
Oh, well. Cashier's check or money order. So you can't pay them with any other thing. You have to go get a money order to do this.
They act like this is the weirdest, most
horrible
important
thing you've
choice
ever
you're like,
done. Yeah, it's weird. Sign this document.
Are you sure you want to volunteer for herpes?
Seriously, they do. They treat you like you ask them to give you herpes.
They act like this is the hazardous, that you're going to go down into a volcano, that you're jumping out from a helicopter to get to. And
a volcano filled with herpes. I'm surprised they don't make you notarize it. Or get your blood drawn, or take a fingerprint, or an eye scan. This is insane how ridiculous they've made this. When we finally got our letter, we noticed that in the letter they make it like a little game where they still give you 3 options, and only one of them is actually an analog meter. The other 2 are still smart meters, and they claim that the technology is disabled or whatever. But if you check the wrong box, you'll opt out and opt into basically just another smart meter, which is just ridiculous. And they make paying for the switch a total pain in the ass. This is why no one wants to do this. They intimidate everyone out. They bully you out of it, and they throw bureaucracy at you so that you'll back down. So then we had to mail that back, which we did also certified, because we were not going to play. We wanted to make sure that they got it. Finally, after nearly a month of waiting, the technician showed up at our house to change out the freaking meter. This should have taken a whole hour or so, maybe 2, and that should have been the end of it. Not even close.
Today's the day we're going to have our smart meter removed. Isn't that smart? Yeah, the guys just showed up at the door. I canned that corny joke.
Maybe we're just unclear about how these things are supposed to go, but the guys did not cut the power off before cutting out the meter. Everything seemed normal, but the guy makes a cut and suddenly we hear a loud pop sound and a giant flash of sparks shoot out the back of our house and all of the power went off.
Guy's on the phone.
You think that's just from taking the meter off?
I don't know. I'm kind of surprised they didn't ask to shut down the power first.
And we heard the guy go, "Oh, and we'd actually been filming that, but for some reason when that happened, the camera shut off and the battery completely drained and the clip was gone. And we still don't know why that clip is gone and it makes Aaron mad to this day. But around this time, as we're sitting in the dark, we get a phone call from our electric company asking us to go ahead and confirm that we actually do want that analog meter.
I'm just calling to verify that from you, if you want to keep the same meter that you had.
We're changing to a non-standard analog meter. We've opted out of the smart meter.
Oh, okay, so you have opted out from smart meter. Okay, all right. I just wanted to verify and confirm that. Okay.
Wait a minute. Are you calling regarding the power outage? What are you calling about?
No, I'm not calling about the power outage. I'm calling to verify that you have agreed to
They're
opted out from non-standard metering.
They're outside right now, already ripping it off my wall.
Do you agreed to opt out?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
The guy came to the door and ambiguously explained that there was something wrong with one of the lugs hooking the meter to the box. And then they took responsibility for it, saying they were going to have someone come out and replace that. And not to worry, because the power was just going to be off for a little while.
No, it's just one of the lugs was loose. I guess it was brittle, so when the meter was cooled, whether the power's off or not, it still was hot. And they're going to replace the lug. It's just a matter of time waiting on them to get some really good electrician over there and get everything up there. Everything has a bit of your power will be off.
After hours of standing around in our backyard on cell phones, the technicians finally came to the front door and told us that we would have to call an electrician to come out and fix the problem that we're pretty sure was caused by someone else at Encore. Because as it turns out, when they first installed the smart meter for the previous owner on this house, they just jimmy rigged it into a housing box that didn't fit the meter at all. It was loosely screwed in, all but jank as possible. We had to get a new box installed, which at first they were speculating might require us getting a building permit.
We're going to have to hire an electrician to repair the lugs inside that meter base before we can end up setting another meter. They're killing out the power right now.
How much is that going to cost?
I have no idea. That depends on the electrician.
Why is that my responsibility?
I was told because you requested that we came out here and change out the meter.
Does it normally spark like that?
No, it's because it was damaged, which is why it broke and burned.
So you don't think you caused that?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you.
This means we could be without power for a while at the coldest time of the year here. So the technician said that, and they left us there with no meter and no power in December in the cold with children. I was not a happy person that day. We desperately called every electrician in the phone book and pled our case until we could find one who would drop what he was doing and take pity on us and come fix this, because you will find if you need an electrician in a hurry, that never happens. Most of them are booked for weeks.
2 hours later.
Hours later, he finally shows up, and he tells us that we were lucky because the way that the smart meter was installed, we were lucky our house hadn't burned down. By the way, neither the technicians nor the electrician could tell us who caused this problem the whole time. If it was something that was our responsibility to deal with, or if it had been an error on the part of the technician from Encore.
Does that seem like it's something that's our fault, or am I catching up here?
Well, you know, unless you were standing right there when he plugged it in, I mean, who knows? He might have hit something and shorted it out. But it definitely burnt. Something arced.
Dispatch is not available to take your call. Please try your call again in a few minutes. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this is who I called.
Don't hang up because the number...
Dispatch is not available to take your call. Please try your call again in a few...
So whatever that means.
A few moments later.
We're sorry, you have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service. If you feel you have reached this recording in error...
Meanwhile...
You know who's in our backyard right now? Encore.
What?
We've got an Encore guy here at our house, and we've got the smart meter issue, and he's working on it. And the fact of the matter is all the guys who've been here today are super nice. They're super friendly. But the reason he's here right now is as a personal favor to the private electrician we've had to hire to deal with the issue. He's not here on a service call, and we cannot get through to Encore's management, and they seemingly won't send a service person. And if this isn't tied to some kind of retribution for an opt-out of a smart meter, I will eat my shoe. And that hold music is my electric provider, as I'm looking at Encore in my backyard, but they are unable at the moment to restore service. How do you like that?
We called another number they gave us, and he said, I cannot speak to customers, I have to go, and hung up on us.
Jonathan?
Hey Jonathan, we had you over here earlier for the smart meter opt-out. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir, I do.
We've got the repair done, the line is done. I've tried to call back both Steve and David, the numbers for the guys at Encore who set up our appointments, and the numbers have been disconnected after Steve told me over the phone he's not allowed to talk to customers. So I would like to know how I'm supposed to get you guys back out here to finish the work.
So that's Encore for you. So then we call the guy back who did the meter. He says we have to call you to have you schedule it. But when
let me ask you this, ma'am. Will you have construction work done at your location, or?
No, they came to switch out the meter. They just came to put a new meter on the house. That's all. There's no construction work, no permits, no nothing. They just came to switch the meter out and put the analog meter on, and they came to do that. And when he pulled the meter off, something touched something else that wasn't supposed to, and it blew our electricity out. So.
So what I would need to do is let me just call a question.
Once they got the box for the analog meter up where it should go and everything was installed the way it should be, Encore told us that we would have to pay reconnect fees. But they wouldn't tell us how much those fees were going to be.
Many months later.
For you to get service tonight, sir, they have after-hour fees that they will bill you on your next bill. Do you want them to do the after-hour fees so you can try and get service on today?
Not only does this situation prove that so few people are opting out that there's no standard process for it at all, but I also just want to point out that if the situation had been reversed and they were putting on a smart meter instead of taking one off, none of this would have happened this way. They would not have forced us to hire an electrician to fix the problem they obviously caused by forcing a smart meter onto a house into a box that it didn't fit properly. This wouldn't have happened in the first place. But they made sure that at every possible turn, this was the most cost-prohibitive, frustrating process they possibly could. They definitely don't want people doing this. And so I just wanted to say that really quick before you watch the rest of how angry I started to get at this point. How is it I have to pay after-hours fees then on top of their mistake? They should waive those fees because this should not even be happening.
Well, I do understand what you're saying, ma'am, but since the meter is owned and operated by Encore, they will bill you the fees if you agree to it, but if not, then they will,
I can't agree to fees that I don't know what the price is. Why would you agree to a fee you don't even know how much it is?
Right. Now, for the account here, if you want to know what the fees would be, you can give Encore a call, and they could probably give you an estimate, but at the present time, ma'am, we do not have that information.
You were just on the phone with them, right?
Correct.
Okay, so can you give me a direct number that I can call that's not going to put me through to a robot that's going to take another 20 minutes?
No, can you put us back on hold and call them back and find out what the fee is going to be?
I do understand, so just give me a second, please. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
How can they do this? I don't want to be on tape right now. How can they do this to us?
We're in bureaucratic hell.
How are they allowed to do that?
2,000 years later.
Do not know what the calculated fees would be. If you would like for them to call you with that information, they can call you with the fees information. That can take up to 2 business days. But they...
That's extortion. That's like signing a blank check to someone. They could come out here and charge us hundreds of dollars. How are we supposed to agree to that?
I do understand.
So if we wanted to get our power back on, they could give us an estimate, but it would take 48 hours for them to tell us what the estimate would be to get the power reconnected if we wanted to wait to know first. Otherwise, we would have to verbally agree over the phone to any price they decided to slap us with for turning our power back on, which could be hundreds of dollars. They just would not tell us at all. If we wanted to get our power back, we'd basically have to sign a blank check over to the power company that may or may not have caused the problem to begin with. It's December, as I said, and by that point, for lack of a better word, we were pissed, okay? Because we'd been dealing with this for a month, and at that point, we'd been dealing with it all day with no power in our house. And said, if you don't agree to let us charge you some magical number of fees that we don't know what the price is, we're not going to give you power back, and you can sit around with your kids in the dark in December with no power in the cold. That is a horrible thing to do to somebody. Why would your company or their company do that?
I would advise you not to piss her off.
Is that my choice? Is that what you're saying my only options are?
No, of course, it's advised they cannot send out a reconnect order until you agree to the fees. But if you do not agree to the fees, they can have a representative from Upcore to call you with those fees if you'd like for them to do that.
But you're saying it could take 2 days for them to call me with those fees?
Correct. Upcore's advised it can take them up to 2 days.
The only way I will agree to this is under duress.
I understand your frustration, like I said. Upcore's...
Okay, I agree under duress. I agree under duress. I agree under duress.
I will tell her that. Thank you, ma'am. So please help.
One eternity later.
They're going to get the work order. They're getting the work order out for you. It could be from anywhere from now until midnight tonight for them to complete this order for you to have the service on.
Well, of course.
Right, so they're stating that they're trying to get it on for you as soon as possible. So you can call. They said to give them a call within an hour, and they would try and have a figure for you regarding the calculation fees on the account. That department closes at 6 p.m. Central Time.
I'm going to call right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll call as soon as we get off the phone. Thanks for being so patient with us, and excuse my upset and language, but I just feel like this is illegal what they're doing, so, you know.
But like I said, they will also try and have a figure for you as well with the after-hour fees on the account. And this would be something that would be billed to your next invoice, nothing that you have to pay up front on the account here.
Yeah, because between now and then, I'm going to call the president of that company and have someone's ass, because I am not paying that. So, all right then. Well, I'm going to call him. I'll give him a call. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Okay. No problem. If you have a issue with that, on the back of your bill, the Public Utility Commission of Texas, their number is on the...
That's who I'm going to call tomorrow.
All right, ma'am. Let me get you to the correct department. That's going to be your service department, ma'am, that handles the temporary disconnects and reconnects. I can also give you their phone numbers in case you get disconnected, ma'am.
Okay, but this is the number I was given by my local company to call to get this issue resolved. It was this number.
This is the incorrect number, ma'am. That's why I'm trying to get you to the right department.
That's scary. Okay. Because he said if I don't call and talk to someone by 6 o'clock, we're just screwed.
Let me get you to that correct department. They'll be able to help you with that. Just one moment, please.
Is that the same number you just got?
It's the same number.
This is the number we just called, sir?
Put me on hold.
Well, you showed the incorrect option, sir.
Oh. Well, there's like 25 options, so you just don't know which one you're supposed to pick, I guess.
There's not 25 options, but you have to push the right option to get to the right department. Let me get you straight to that department, okay?
Yeah, the raping and killing department. Thank you.
Sorry?
I said, yeah, whatever.
Wow.
That's what happens when you find out you work for douchebags. Like, you feel compelled to, like, it's not 25 options. Your company is a whore.
It's because they have a monopoly.
Welcome to Encore.
So much later that the old narrator got tired of waiting and they had to hire a new one.
Oh, and the lady tried to claim the reason our power was shut off is because of a broken lug in the meter box that didn't fit their smart meter, which isn't Encore's domain, she said. But we all knew that was not exactly what happened at all, because the power was never purposefully shut off for anything. A giant flash and pop sound happened, and all of our power went out. That is how the power went off.
Will actually temporarily disconnect the line the tower so that way that could be fixed. So that's why he left, and that's why the power was shut off, because it was a broken lug on the meter base.
So you don't think you caused it?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you, but
Does that seem like it's something that's our fault?
Unless you were standing right there when he plugged it in. I mean, who knows? But it definitely burnt. Something arced.
8:01 p.m.
So, after we finally got our electricity back on and our properly labeled non-standard meter, and we stopped being pissed off about the things that happened at our house that day, overall we felt better. We just felt better. Some people might say that's a placebo, but it was noticeably better in this house. That vice that liked to tighten itself on my head on a daily basis stopped. The headaches stopped. I began sleeping better. I began having dreams again. My son stopped sleeping in the living room. Not only that, but we actually noticed that despite the extra fee they tried to scare us away with up front, our monthly bills actually went down for electricity in this house. So in the long run of living here, we've saved more money than the switch initially cost us. So not only that, but also after we got the analog meter back, our house started working properly again. The electricity has stopped malfunctioning to the point that if you turn on the dryer, the oven doesn't shut off and things like that don't happen anymore. Because this house was built in the early 90s and it wasn't built to take a smart meter. It wasn't built in the time of smart meters, and they just think they can rig one on the side like that and it's supposed to work, but I think we're lucky right now that our house is still standing. Of course, we'll never get all of those hours of our lives back that the power company filled with BS, but the power of being able to make our own decisions about whether or not we want to be beamed with non-ionizing radiation every minute, every hour, all day long, and choosing not to, is priceless.
Yeah, you know, intimidation, but if we're tying up their resources, maybe we're doing some good. After all, that's been pretty much what a lot of people have figured out, that one way to oppose the establishment, the system, is to waste their resources and make it cost too much to carry out bad policies. I don't know if that works entirely, but I know today we had the smart meter removed. We opted out of the smart meter, which is a policy that Encore and other providers didn't want to do, but they were compelled in the case of Texas to do it. And so we had them remove the smart meter. Should have been a very simple operation. That's in fact what the people working for the company told us as well. But instead it took 4 employees on site, a total of 7 hours today. And it took several other employees on the phone, tied up with dealing with our issue, in my opinion, because the company has a resistance to the opt-out meter and they're trying to make it difficult on you as a customer, on me as a customer, to opt out. And they've put expenses and fees and hoops you have to jump through, like sending them a certified letter. And it was a pain in the ass, but did they have the victory? I feel like I had the victory because I forced them to go through the steps of allowing me to opt out, which is my right as a customer and my right as a person residing in the state of Texas. And just imagine what would happen if everyone opted out. Their whole system would be broken. They wouldn't even have enough employees to do it. And yeah, they might be rich in upfront cash for people paying for the meters, but once the old meters are back on, they cannot centrally shut it down from a database in their offices, which could be located anywhere in the world. They've got to physically send out workers. Bottom line, whether you're going through the TSA or dealing with the smart meter or any other issue, exercising and flexing your rights, doing things like an opt-out is just one small example, can completely shut down their system with just one person opting out. I saw them basically shut down the TSA check line because myself and Melissa opted out. That overwhelmed them. Imagine if 10 people in the line had opted out. They would stop doing that crap. They would stop doing it real quick, and they'd go back to a model that respects people and makes sense at some basic, decent level.
So, you know, it's worth doing this because all of the studies that are coming out that are not being funded by the government and
pro, cell phone companies and stuff like that are showing things like DNA breakage. It's harming all these parts inside of people's bodies. It's causing infertility issues, and obviously not being able to sleep and having brain fog is a huge issue in this society. We obviously all are suffering these effects. The people who produce and sell melatonin are probably making millions of dollars right now off of this. So do not be intimidated. Get rid of your smart meter. Like I said, that thing is in the back of my house. It is pulsing all the way out my front door. It is going through all of the bedrooms in my home. It is coming out of my kitchen, and it was making this meter go off like crazy. Just every time it would pulse up this huge, the spike would go from like 3 to several hundred, okay? And I'm not obviously handy with all the technology and all the names of all the different rates here, but it was incredibly high, because you should be sitting in a background radiation that is very, very low. And we know it's like 1,000,000 times higher than it was 30 years ago. No one knows what's going on. We're sitting in a huge science experiment, and I guess I'm just saying, don't be intimidated. Get rid of your freaking smart meter.
And the final issue is that being exposed to EMF is now just a reality of modern day society. Do what we may, we're still going to be exposed to it, especially in public areas, in schools and workplaces, but especially at night when your body is repairing itself, when you're resting and recovering. You've got to have a break from this stuff, and unless you have the smart meter removed, you're not going to have the chance to do that unless you unplug your Wi-Fi signals, turn off your phone, and have that stuff isolated and quarantined from you so you can rest and repair, so your body can cope with modern life. It's a really understated point.
Exactly. It's like turning the light off and on all night long while you sleep. Your brain can never rest.